So let me first start by asking, are there questions, thoughts, things that need a little more follow-up from last time? Yes.
I was just wondering how the other age group had other comments, concerns. You commented about the different age groups between your morning and your soon-to-be afternoon when we had met.
The group that was here in the evening was relatively similar age group. There were a handful of people who I would say were closer to my own age group, who were very quiet the whole night, but were there, and I say good for them. One of those people commented to me that they had been talking with some other people at church around their same age. Not that they were going to be here, but that this probably is a good thing to think about, because folks have children who are not adults yet, and you want to make sure stuff is lined up in case something happens to one or both parents. So yeah, it was. We had a smaller in-person group and a larger online group in the evening. So I want to start with a thought exercise. Today we're going to be talking about some medical aspects of end-of-life issues. If I was not able to make you uncomfortable last week, I'm fairly certain I'll be able to do so this week, with the possible exceptions of Buzz and Terry, because you've worked in the medical field. So everyone else, I may be able to get inside your head today. So there. To which I know Bob is in the back going, how is that different than any other day, Eric? So, all right. I want you to, because we're talking about end-of-life issues with medical aspects, I want you to think about this for a moment. You are the decision maker and the caregiver for the following person. The person is unable to walk. The person is unable to, we'll say it's a he, the person is unable to feed himself. The person is nonverbal, cannot speak to you. I do not need anyone to raise your hands. You don't need to shout out one way or the other. But if the decision was put in front of you, should we continue life-sustaining care for this person? Think for a moment about how you might go about making that decision, what that decision might be. Just sit with that for a moment. Now let me throw one additional piece of information out there, and this I will ask for a show of hands on. Let's say this person is not 90 years old. Let's say this person is 90 hours old. Does that influence your decision making? Does that change your decision? Correct.
The question is, no matter what the age, are they taking feeding? Are they taking oral feedings? As we feed them.
Shoot, I hadn't thought that far ahead. Okay, because the question was, is the person taking oral feeding? Medical people have to go in and ask more specific questions. So let me say this. The whole idea of the exercise is just to help us see that these decisions can be complex, and there are a lot of factors that can go into decisions about what kind of care we want, what kind of care should be continued. Sometimes one of those factors is what other conditions are going on. If somebody is, and again, this is just hypothetical, if somebody is 95 and the person has terminal cancer that has been, they've been sick with for a long time, and the person has a heart attack, that may change the equation as far as, do you want people to perform CPR and so forth versus somebody who's 45 and otherwise in fairly good health. So we're going to be we're going to be dealing with a lot of gray area today, and we'll touch on in a few minutes the fact that we cannot necessarily open our Bibles to a specific chapter and verse to give us an answer on this, because for the people who wrote the Bible, many of these issues were not even relevant. So we will have to do the best we can. So with that, yes.
I think in your description too, one of the other factors that would be important is the condition permanent. Is there a chance for recovery? Because either in both, yeah, it's not a permanent condition, so we're not going to worry about it in the baby's case. But if it's someone older, is there a chance to recover, or is this terminal or whatever? So I think that factors into it too, besides
Absolutely. The point was made. Another factor is, what are the chances for recovery? Is this the sort of thing where people are saying, the person just came out of surgery. Yeah, they can't walk, they can't talk, they can't feed themselves, whatever the case may be, but that's going to change within a couple of days. That's one thing. When it's an infant and all the developmental markers are there, that's going to change. Whether they will ever sleep past 6 o'clock in the morning, that I don't know if that's ever going to change. Hence why I'm a caffeine addict. Is it the result of a permanent catastrophic problem? And there is not going to be a positive change. That's of course another factor, and we'll dive into that in a little bit. But yeah, who is the person to you if you are the decision maker? Yeah. We'll touch on that in a minute too. So let's turn. We're going to get out of your people's specialty and area of expertise, and we're going to turn to mine now. I'm going to get back on home turf here. Let's open up our Bibles. We're going to start with 1 Corinthians. We want to talk a little bit about the significance of the body, because we have had some strains of tradition within the church that I believe have done Scripture and done God's creation a disservice. And I hope to correct some of that this morning, or at least start correcting it this morning. 1 Corinthians chapter 15, starting at verse 42. That would be on page 933. So it is with the resurrection of the dead. What is sown is perishable, what is raised is imperishable. It is sown in dishonor, it is raised in glory. It is sown in weakness, it is raised in power. It is sown a physical body, it is raised a spiritual body. If there is a physical body, there is also a spiritual body. Thus it is written, the first man, Adam, became a living being. The last Adam became a life-giving spirit. But it is not the spiritual that is first, but the physical, and then the spiritual. The first man was from the earth, a man of dust. The second man is from heaven. As was the man of dust, so are those who are of the dust. And as is the man of heaven, so are those who are of heaven. Just as we have borne the image of the man of dust, we will also bear the image of the man of heaven. What I am saying, brothers and sisters, is this: flesh and blood cannot inherit the kingdom of God, nor does the perishable inherit the imperishable. Listen, I will tell you a mystery. We will not all die, but we will all be changed. In a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trumpet. For the trumpet will sound, and the dead will be raised imperishable, and we will be changed. So, what do we take from Paul's revelation on the resurrection? Does Paul talk about there's like spirits and souls floating around somewhere, and at some point God grabs one and shoves it in some flesh, and you're alive, and then you die, and the spirit or soul or whatever kind of goes back out to wherever it is? Is that the understanding of creation that Paul is putting out for us here? No, that is the correct answer. Thank you. Paul is saying we will be changed, we will be transformed. He does not say the spiritual is first, then it's physical for a while, then it's spiritual again. He says the physical is first. We bear the image of the man formed from the dust of the earth. We bear the image of Adam. As Richard Swanson, who's a commentator, translates it, he calls Adam mud guy, because it's also the word for the soil or the dirt, which I think is kind of hilarious because that's also my brother's name. So there have been a lot of church people for a long time who have said, well, you know, the physical is just kind of like a necessary evil or something. You know, the spiritual is really what matters. And no, I don't think that's biblical at all. I think that comes right out of Greek philosophical texts. I think that is not really how God operates. And let's look at some scriptural backing for that bold assumption. If we turn all the way back, if we want to think about creation, let's start with Genesis. Genesis chapter 2. On page 2. The Lord God formed man from the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and the man became a living being. It wasn't that the man was somewhere, somehow alive, and then became embodied. There is no life without that physical part of life. God creates all of this actual real stuff that's around us. And in Genesis 1, God does that in a very orderly way in stages. What does God say at the end of each day after God makes some actual physical stuff we can touch? And it was good. Tov. Then he gets to the end of the 6th day and he makes people. And what does God say? This is very good. Tov me'od. This is very good. So this notion that the physical is important to God, I think, is something we need to wrap our minds around, particularly when it comes to if people are in a kind of gray area with where their physical body is. I think we need to keep in mind that God values our physical body. God also values the health and wellness of that body. There's a reason Jesus spent so much of his ministry healing. So when people say, well, the body doesn't really matter, I don't know. I think Jesus overrules you on that. Jesus didn't just walk by the people who are hurting, people who can't walk, people who are sick. Jesus didn't just walk by and say, well, your soul's in good shape since I talked to you, so carry on. No, Jesus understood the importance of the well-being of the body, and I think that's an important thing for us to remember. If we go to almost another interpretation of that creation account, to John's Gospel, page 858. The Word became flesh and lived among us, and we have seen his glory, the glory as of a Father's only Son, full of grace and truth. John wants to make it really clear that Jesus is the embodiment of God. The world that God created matters so much that God became a part of it in order to redeem it. So again, those are the stakes when it comes to our bodies and our physical health. It is not just, well, I'm waiting till I die so I can be free. No, that is not what Scripture is endorsing. Which is why, if you turn one page before that in your Bibles to Luke chapter 24, which is why you have passages like this in the New Testament, 24, 36, and following. While they were talking about this, Jesus himself stood among them and said to them, "Peace be with you." They were startled and terrified and thought they were seeing a ghost. He said to them, "Why are you frightened? And why do doubts arise in your hearts? Look at my hands and my feet. See that it is I myself. Touch me and see. For a ghost does not have flesh and bones as you see that I have." And when he said this, he showed them his hands and his feet. Well, in their joy, they were disbelieving and still wondering. He said to them, "Have you anything here to eat?" He gave them a piece of broiled fish, and he took it and ate it in their presence. So this is Luke chapter 24. What is significant about Jesus in Luke chapter 24? He's the risen Jesus, absolutely. And the risen Jesus, they said, he has a tangible body. They thought they were seeing a ghost, and Jesus says, no. Ghosts don't have flesh and bones like this. Ghosts certainly don't eat. Where's the snapper? So, or whatever it was, tilapia, whatever they had in the lake. So there is an importance to that. And to turn back to 1 Corinthians, let me, page 926. Do you not know that your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit within you, which you have from God, and that you are not your own? For you were bought with a price. Therefore, glorify God in your body. So Paul is even emphasizing that your body, there was a saying in ancient Greek, the body is a tomb. Paul says, no, the body is a temple. The body is a place where the Holy Spirit dwells. So I think talking about stewardship of our health, talking about stewardship of our bodies, and we're doing that in a very specific way today, or over a very specific range of topics. There is definitely scriptural warrant for that. So making the most faithful decisions we can about what kind of care do we want for our bodies, how long do we want that care to go on, that is very much, I believe, in line with the witness of Scripture. Let me stop there. Questions, comments, concerns? Well, let me ask you this. Have I rattled anybody's cage enough with my bold assertions about the resurrection yet? If not, I will work harder. Question.
I was just gonna say, I had this person that I know that I felt was not taking care of themselves and were letting issues, get out of hand. So I informed them that body that was with them was a gift from God, and it was something that they should take care of, so they should get themselves to a doctor. I thought a guilt trip might move it along.
So the comment was, I had a friend who I believe was not taking good care of that body, and I told my friend, your body is a gift from God. You need to take good care of. So the guilt was trotted out at that point. Did that work?
Somewhat, yes.
Okay.
It took a while, but yeah, eventually, yeah.
It was somewhat effective. Yeah, some people develop an immunity to guilt early on. Others struggle with it for a long time. So let me just mention that when we start these conversations, and that's what we are doing here today, is I want to equip you and prepare you to have these conversations with all the relevant people in your life, whomever they may be. Yeah, they're probably going to be a little uncomfortable. We talked last time that you may get some resistance from people. But I think being able to go into those conversations properly equipped and having a good understanding of these are some of the options available, and this is why I am choosing these options, and this is why I am asking you to advocate for me should that happen, is important. So again, I just want to prepare you. Possibly not the easiest conversations in the world, and maybe this, I would assume most of you might be having these conversations with siblings or children, but people who are old enough to remember this, if you need a little extra motivation for getting your stuff together and making these decisions and having the correct people in place to make those decisions, let me give you that little extra inspiration, and I believe I can do it in 2 words. Terri Schiavo. Do people remember Terri Schiavo? Maybe 10 years ago, she was in Florida. She had I want to say it was a catastrophic stroke and was in a vegetative state. She was in the middle of a divorce. Her husband was still officially the decision maker. Her parents also were part of that process, and they got into a legal battle. Congress was called into session to pass a law supposedly that would just affect this one individual. Whatever your opinion of Congress, I don't know that having them involved in making decisions about your end-of-life care is something any of us really want. We cannot plan for every single contingency, but there is a lot we can do. We do not want to be on top of everything else going on. If we have something catastrophic happen to us, we do not want to be in the middle of I'm trying to think of phrases to describe the situation that don't use profanity. We don't want to be in the midst of a mess like that. So if you're on the fence about, I don't know if I really want to pull the trigger on this, you do not want to end up in the same situation as Terry. So some medical aspects that we can take into account. I think it's pretty clear in Scripture, God is always on the side of life. God is always looking for a way for healing. God is always looking for a way to provide for creation, for God's people. Jesus is healing. Jesus is feeding. Jesus is casting out demons. God is always on the side of life. I think that's clear and fairly straightforward. How that works out in specific situations gets to be a heck of a lot more difficult to interpret. There are medical treatments available today that put us in a predicament where it might be difficult to say hands down, yes, this is the faithful decision. And very often, life support is one of those areas. I just want to talk briefly about a few of these things that are out there, just to think about how that might play into effect. So if God is always on the side of life, what does that mean in terms of life support? Does that mean God is on the side of, you are going to keep this person alive, you're going to keep the heart beating and the lungs working as long as is possible? Or is God on the side of quality of life? Would just keeping the heart beating and the lungs functioning be the faithful thing to do if the person is in pain, if the person cannot communicate with loved ones? And again, in this setting, I'm not going to jump in and say one is right and one is wrong. That is something that you will have to hash out with your advocates and so on. If you want to talk to me one-on-one about that, I'm happy to share my thoughts. But so when we talk about life support, that may include, but is not limited to, things like a ventilator. It's a machine that breathes for you. There's a variety of different ventilators out there, depending on the level of assistance you need. It could be a mask over the face. It could be a tube down your mouth. It could be something that's surgically inserted through your throat with a tracheostomy. That would be, if you're on it for a longer span of time. To Dan's point that he touched on earlier, there are many instances where the use of a ventilator is a short-term thing. And that may change the equation if it's the sort of thing where they say, for this medical reason, the person is going to need help breathing for, a couple of days or something. That's one thing. If the physician says this is going to be a lifetime thing, they're going to need help breathing for the rest of their life, that may change the equation too. So it's all of these things they could be temporary, they could be permanent, and that is something you'll want to take into account. Life support can include administering fluids. My notes tell me that you typically go through 1 liter of fluid a day, just due to normal processes your body does. It just consumes about 1 liter of fluid per day, and you got to replace that or else you get dehydrated. People can receive oral hydration depending on their condition. It may be IV fluids. And and certainly you want to stay hydrated. In certain conditions, if you continue to receive fluids, you might get swelling in places. You might get fluid near your lungs or your heart. It might lead to problems with incontinence. So even fluids, you're going to want to weigh your options there. When I was an ICU chaplain, somebody had asked, gosh, if somebody, if we made the decision to withdraw fluids from someone, is that person going to be miserable because they're thirsty? And the staff in the ICU had said, typically then we give people ice chips. We give people moist swabs so you don't get that sensation of dryness. Another issue, and this was right at the heart of the Terry Schiavo case, feeding tube. And again, it could be a temporary measure. It could be a permanent thing. Do you need nourishment if you cannot eat, or you need very special nourishment? And again, it could be a temporary thing that might be up your nose. It could be a permanent thing where they insert it through your abdomen. So those are all things you'll have to think about, all things you'll have to touch on. Let me stop there. I may not be able to answer any and all questions, but I will do my best, and we may have some other people here who can offer other perspective on that. Yes.
So, you're told that the feeding tube would just be temporary. And so you agreed to let that happen.
Mm-hmm.
And then a week or so later, all of a sudden, it's like, this is going to be a permanent thing. What are your options?
The question was, let's say you're told a feeding tube should be temporary, and after a period of time, they say, actually, you know what? This is a permanent thing. To the best of my knowledge, your options are to, if they think it's going to be temporary, my guess, and people who have more knowledge of this, let me know by all means. My guess is if they think it's going to be temporary, they will probably try to do the nasal thing. If it is going to be permanent, they will probably ask, do you want like a surgically inserted one so you don't have to have a tube up your nose all the time? Or they may say, do you want the feeding tube withdrawn? And again, there's a lot of things that would come into play. If that's the only, they're saying, everything else is good. You can breathe, your heart's working. There's just something with your digestive tract or whatever the case may be. That probably is going to factor into your decision. I can enjoy a fairly good quality of life. It's just that my nutrition is going to come through this tube rather than from eating. In my mind, that's one thing. If you're going to need a feeding tube and dialysis and a ventilator, and you'll be immobile, and so on, that you may want to do. My impression is that it is typically more difficult to stop some of these things once they've started than it is to say, no, I don't want to do it. But again, Barbara, to your point, if you're told up front, to the best of our knowledge, this is a temporary thing. We just need to get you over the hump, so to speak. Again, that's very different than we can put this in now and it'll be a permanent thing. Let us know if you want us to do it or not. Like I said, I don't have the answers. Oh, that I wish I did. But yeah, that'll be something to consider as well.
I think a good question to ask is the giving of fluids or food just prolonging the normal dying process.
Ah.
Because there comes a time, especially with people with dementia, they
So the question that you may want to ask is this prolonging the dying process? And that's a different question than, is this prolonging life? Because sometimes people in a sense will know that it's time, and that may be why they aren't eating. So are you dragging out the process of death, or are you prolonging someone's life? And those are two different things. So that would be an excellent question to ask. Are we prolonging life, or are we prolonging death? Folks who are participating online, questions, comments, concerns? Oh, hold on. Can we unmute
I'm
you?
fine. I don't have any questions right now.
Okay, very good. So those are some of the things that you'll have to take into account. And then, so those are kind of usually longer term sorts of things. Then you get into the kind of acute things, which are kind of, life support is kind of a catch-all term. Then another catch-all term is heroic measures. Do you want heroic measures? Some of these kind of last-ditch efforts to save a life, you're going to have to think about the balance between benefit and adverse effect. So somebody receives a diagnosis of advanced cancer. Say they come back and they say, the reason you've been feeling terrible is you have stage 4 cancer. Is the heroic measure of immediately beginning massive chemotherapy the positive effect of that is it will start to treat the cancer. It may give you more time. Depending on other factors, they may say, yeah, we have a pretty good chance of actually doing something about this. The negative effect is that chemotherapy is absolutely grueling on a person's body. It's got all kinds of really hard side effects. So you'll want to take into consideration. And again, part of that is going to be, are you 36 and otherwise in good health? And they say, yeah, we think there's a good chance that with the chemotherapy, you can have some quality of life. Are you 96? Is your body going to be able to withstand the impact of the chemotherapy? So when we get into the heroic measures, that's another equation. CPR, and one of the things we're going to look at is a do not resuscitate order, and that has some questions specifically about cardiopulmonary resuscitation. It usually does not work exactly the way it works on TV. I have never actually had to do this for real, but I have been there when it has been done. It is not pretty. The thought is life over limb. People's ribs get busted, sometimes lungs get injured. It's not pretty. If it's the difference between living and dying, okay, that's one thing. But depending on your health, you reach a point where you usually will not ever be in as good a place after a resuscitation as you were in before. You will not bounce back quite as high. And that's something that you will need to, talk with your physician about. And again, there's a lot of factors in play. And again, if it's somebody who has been suffering from a chronic illness and then has a heart attack, to resuscitate that person is going to have a different impact than the person who is seemingly doing okay and has a heart attack and is resuscitated. So there's there's a lot of factors. And if here's a chance to review from last week. We talked about that these documents have a shelf life, so to speak. Does anybody remember our acronym for when we want to make sure we revisit all of these documents?
Every decade.
The 5 Ds. The 5 Ds.
Yeah.
And I already heard every decade.
Right?
What other Ds do we know?
Oh,
If there's a divorce, yep, you want to make sure if there's a death of someone close to you, a significant diagnosis, or a significant decline in your health, you will want to revisit these things. And it may change some of your decisions. It may not change others. But it is probably better to take the time to look over it and say, yeah, this is still exactly kind of where I'm at, than get into a situation and go, well, yeah, 25 years ago, this would have been the right call for me, but now, So yeah, we do want to make sure that we weigh that balance for ourselves between the benefit of the heroic measures as well as adverse effects of it. Another kind of catch-all term that's out there is palliative care, and that is not exactly the same thing as hospice. It is a component of hospice. Palliative care is just the blanket term for medicine that deals with management of pain and helping people be more comfortable. So you have major surgery. They will probably have a palliative care person talk to you, because after they cut you open and tinker with your insides, you're going to have some pain, and you do not want to be completely miserable. Treating chronic pain can make a huge difference in quality of life. There may be some trade-offs, particularly in end-of-life situations. Sometimes if you go to visit somebody who is close to the end of their life, the person is asleep a lot. Sometimes it is a result of their health. Other times they are dealing with a lot of pain, and some of the very effective pain medications make you drowsy, and the person is sleeping a lot. So one of the things you want to weigh is, do I want to have more time where I am alert and able to visit with people, yet I will be in awful pain? Or do I want to be more comfortable, but maybe have less time when I can talk with people? If you've ever had a bout with serious pain, you know that is not the simplest question in the world to answer. And not only making you drowsy, but other very effective pain medications can start to suppress breathing, which can also have other impacts. Sometimes they cloud your mind. You can start to hallucinate. But again, you need to weigh that against how much tolerance do I have for pain. So again, like I said, I am not going to jump in and make any decisions for you. I'll tell you that right up front. But I do want to try to lay out there, this is a good overview of the sorts of decisions you're going to have to discuss and make with the people who matter to you. But why we are here, there are choices you can make ahead of time. Your default position for healthcare providers, from your paramedics to your hospital staff and so on, is, unless there is incontrovertible evidence to the contrary, like there is a signed, properly executed DNR form right in front of them and they are holding it in their hand, they are obligated to try to resuscitate you. If your heartbeat or your breathing stops, they are going to try to bring you back. That is, they don't have a choice. You can make decisions ahead of time about whether this is right for you, and you can, again, if you take nothing else from our time together, talk to the people they are going to call and say, so-and-so is here, they are in a crisis, you are the person who can speak for him or her. And so within your documents, there are some examples here. And all of these documents, I believe they are all, they're definitely all available from the State of Indiana website. And you can type in your information and print it out and then sign it, or you can fill it out by hand. So one of them is your out of hospital do not resuscitate declaration and order. And so in Indiana, it outlines what all is involved with that, and you need the signatures of 2 witnesses as well as your physician. And again, you would want to talk to your doctor before you just go ahead and sign this. You can talk to your doctor and, possibly ask, is there a good reason for me to have this? Based on what you know of my health, will resuscitation allow me to maintain a quality of life afterwards? Or is it going to be like being run over by a truck? You're going to want to talk to your doctor. You don't have to phrase it quite like that, but you will want to talk to your physician about that. So one of the things you'll want to talk about is this DNR order. And yes, you can go print your own, but my goal with getting us together here, I want to take away as many possible roadblocks or excuses as possible. So if you actually have the paper in front of you, it's hard to say, well, I don't know, I can't get the paper, because here it is. So that will be one that you will want to do. Another one is the post form. In other places, it is the POLST form, and I don't remember what POLST stands for, P-O-L-S-T. In Indiana, just like in most places, it's the DMV, and in Indiana, we have the BMV. In Indiana, we have the POST form, Physician Orders for Scope of Treatment. This form, as you can see, this allows you to say, for CPR, yes. If you have no pulse and is not breathing, yes, I want to attempt CPR. No, I do not want you to attempt CPR. If there is a different situation, it is not your heart has stopped or your breathing has stopped, then it will go to questions B, C, and D. Medical interventions. If you have a pulse and are breathing, or you have a pulse and are not breathing, do you want comfort measures? Do you want limited? So the goal of comfort measures, maximize comfort. That's good, and it goes into a little bit of detail about what all that may involve. Limited additional interventions, stabilization of medical condition. So kind of wherever you're at, they're going to try to keep you there. Or full intervention. Full intervention includes life support measures in the intensive care unit. You can specify which of those you think is right for you. Use of antibiotics. Do I want antibiotics only if comfort cannot be achieved through other means? Do I want that if it is consistent with treatment goals? So if you say I want full intervention, you would say I want those antibiotics consistent with the treatment goals. Artificially administered nutrition. Always offer by mouth if possible, and then you can specify there. I don't want this at all. I want it for a trial period, and you can specify what that period is in an amount of time, or, I want a feeding tube until I can eat by mouth. Or you can say long-term, as long as needed. Optional additional orders. I do not know what that would include, but that is why you're going to talk to your physician about this and not just say, oh, well, you know, Pastor Eric told us to fill this out. So I wrote down on there that, you know, I want people to use leeches as a part of my treatment, you know, or something like that. I do not endorse any kind of witch doctor kind of stuff. You know, no, I'm not even gonna say anything. So this is a 2-page form. Make sure you fill them out both. So this one says, this is the stuff I want. And the next page, signature of the patient, signature of legally appointed representative. This indicates my physician or physician's designee discussed with me the above orders and selected the orders correctly to represent my wishes. Contact information, documentation, signature. So yeah, you're going to need physician signature on this too. Bring this with you to your doctor. This is why I like having a table. Hold on. Where was it? Okay. All right. And there is also a document called a living will, and you should have a copy of that in there somewhere as well. Living will declaration. I make known my desires that my dying shall not be artificially prolonged under the circumstances set forth below. If at any time my physician certifies in writing I have an incurable injury, disease, or illness, my death will occur within a short time. The use of life-prolonging measures would only artificially prolong the dying process, along the lines of what Buzz had noted earlier. I direct that such procedures be withheld or withdrawn, and I be permitted to die naturally with the following specifications. They talk about nutrition and hydration, and the extent to which you want that. This has to be signed by 2 witnesses. So you have your living will declaration. This is also one, again, you're going to want your physician's input because everyone's situation is different. So there are a lot of things that we can decide on ahead of time. And again, these do have, officially, they do not have a shelf life. I could sign this today, and if I live another 50 years, which I don't know if any of us are going to live 50 years from now, but if I do, I could sign this today and it'll still be valid. Might my priorities and situation change between now and then? Yeah, probably. I will want to update this, but if I do it now, I could walk away from it and never come back. I wouldn't recommend it, but you could. So those are the first batch of things that you can make some decisions and put them in writing. They will have official standing. Oh, and here it is. Updating these documents. I've gone back to our outline here. The 5 Ds. Every decade, when there's a divorce, when there's a major diagnosis, the death of someone close to you, a decline in your health, and someone mentioned last week there may be a need for a 6th D, which could fall under a diagnosis or a decline if there is the beginning of dementia. Someone mentioned last week that was a situation in her family. These documents all needed to be changed, and they needed to be done quickly because there was only so much time when the family member would still be capable of having those conversations. So that may be another D to consider. So like I said, we can make a lot of plans. We can know exactly what we want. What if something I haven't planned for comes up and I cannot make the decision for myself? This is why we have the healthcare power of attorney, which you should also have there. your healthcare power of attorney, you can specify what powers the person has, and it comes with instructions. Read the instructions. And this allows that if you are not able to make decisions for your own, and you can specify certain terms or conditions, that you give a specific person your authority to make that decision on your behalf. So if you are unable to speak for yourself for whatever reason, this is the person who speaks for you. So like we said before, you'll want to think a little bit about who you want that person to be. An immediate family member might be the best person for you. An immediate family member may not be the best person for you. Just as an example, if you say, I'm going to have my oldest child be my healthcare power of attorney, my wishes are that I do not want any kind of, I just want comfort care. I don't want any heroic measures. You make that decision, you talk to your child about that, and your child says, I can't pull the plug on you, Dad. You may want to consider someone else. You need the person, even, let's say you have the conversation with your child and your child says, okay, those are your wishes. I understand that. I don't like your decision, but I will honor your wishes. That's very different. So it may be spouse, child, niece, nephew, whoever it is, close friend. That immediate family member might be the right person, they might not be. And again, I can't make that call for you because I don't know the cast of characters. If you do not designate an agent, the state of Indiana has a law that says your healthcare providers are going to try to call people in the following order. If you have a judicially appointed guardian or a representative appointed by the court, they're going to call that person first. The next person is your spouse, unless legally separated or there is a pending petition for separation, dissolution, annulment, protective order, or a no contact order. So if there is something going on legally with your spouse, they may jump over him or her and go to an adult child. After adult child is parent, an adult sibling, a grandparent, an adult grandchild, an adult friend, and the last is the nearest other adult relative in the next degree of kinship, not listed in B through H. They will call the dog as long as the dog is an adult. If it's a puppy, they won't call him, but if it's an adult, they'll reach out to the dog. So if you think about those people, for some of you, those people may not be an option. I have one grandparent left. Grandma is going to be 98 on Saturday. Grandma is not completely with us anymore. She would not be a person who could make a decision. They would probably say, Lori, you need to make a decision about Eric's health. And she might say, who's Eric and why am I making this decision? And then she would probably crack some kind of joke because her sense of humor is still there. But I do not have an adult child, much less an adult grandchild. So I would want to take that into account as I designate representatives. I suspect some of you no longer have parents or grandparents who would be a part of this decision-making process. You may have an adult child and you may say, for whatever reason, they're not the right fit. So unless you want people to go in this order, and you may just want to say, just go in this order, you will want to designate someone of your own choosing. Some things to consider. It should be someone who knows you well, somebody who cares about you, who wants what's best for you, and somebody who will be able to make a tough decision. If you have someone in your life who you always say, you know, what do you want to do? And the person, I don't know, I can't make this decision. I'm just asking if you want to order pizza or Chinese food. I can't decide. That person may not be the right fit for this. Like I said, a close family member might be the right choice. A close family member might not be the right choice. That person will probably need to have at least a slight stubborn streak. They may have to stand up for you. They may have to get in someone's face. My brother, when I mentioned this is what we were talking about today, he said where he works, they refer to it as the seagull effect, because they're in Wisconsin, and he said it's typically a cousin that flies in from the coast who hasn't seen grandma in 40 years, and the family says, yes, we think it's time to take grandma off life support, and then the seagull comes in from the coast and starts squawking, how dare you, don't do this. As the representative, you might have to get in the person's face and say, I hear you, I understand where you're coming from, I'm the one who had the conversation with grandma, and this is what she wants. So there. Yes. I just flew in from the coast, and boy, are my arms tired. Ideally, the person should be geographically close. That is not an absolute necessity. But if you have a couple of people you think would be equally qualified and capable, you may want to have your first choice be the person who is geographically nearby. It will be simpler to be able to do some of these things in person. That person should not be your healthcare provider. You should not make your doctor your power of attorney for healthcare. That's just bad practice. It should not be the owner or operator of the healthcare facility serving you. You know, my dad's cousin was the administrator of a nursing home. God forbid I would end up in the nursing home. I would not make him my healthcare power of attorney. He has a conflict of interest. He is providing my care. Perhaps he should not be making the decisions about the extent to which to provide that care. And it should not be the employee of your healthcare provider. It should not be the spouse of any of those people. You want to try and avoid any conflicts of interest. If a person has any interest or angle or benefit from providing you health care, they probably should not be your decision maker when it comes to health care. Let me stop there and ask for questions, comments, concerns. Yes.
Going back to the paperwork.
Yes.
When I've been in for surgeries and someone designated as a healthcare power of attorney, do I have any paperwork that yeah, I do. And well, I brought that in. I said, no, it's a safety deposit.
Oh.
The paperwork doesn't do you a good if you fill it out and see.
Amen. Preach, brother. So what I'm responding so enthusiastically to is somebody who said, I went to the hospital. I was having surgery, you know, like this was planned out. I wasn't brought in through the emergency department. And they asked me, do you have your healthcare power of attorney? Do you have your advanced directives? And he said, yes, they're in my safety deposit box. And the hospital said, we don't care. If we're not looking at them, they're not real. We're going to talk in a few minutes about where we want to have these. But yes, absolutely. Yeah, if the healthcare provider is not looking at them, in effect, they don't exist. I saw another hand up. I saw a few more hands up. Mm-hmm. Yes. So we just had a testimony to the fact that having these things prepared ahead of time and discussing them with the interested parties. The person who shared the testimony said, we sat down not only with all three of our children, but with their spouses too, because sometimes in the midst of things, the child may not be in the right frame of mind. The child's spouse has at least a degree of separation and may be able to make that call. But then when the physicians brought everyone in together, because people had taken the time to talk about this ahead of time and made it absolutely crystal clear, the physician said, these are our options. Everybody was on the same page about, yes, this is what dad wants. This is what my husband wants. So preach, sister. Yes. Communication is everything. It saves a lot of second guessing later. More questions? Yes. Yes. Uh, a- Advice to make lots of copies and bring them. Say you are going, in for surgery or whatever the case may be. Bring them. They have put your loved one in the ambulance and taken them to the hospital. Grab that on your way to go to the hospital with them. Have those things with you. Have lots of copies. And Franciscan, I have just been told, will add these papers to your medical chart. So they should be able to pull them up wherever the case may be. I suspect most hospital systems will do that, but we know for a fact that Franciscan will. Folks who are participating online, questions, comments, concerns?
I think it was a great recommendation to take your documents. I needed to know how to sign for power of attorney for my mother. And at the time I was in the emergency room, I didn't know what to do. And so I, signed my own name and, I told them I had power of attorney, but I had to wait another day or so before I could call my attorney to call my mom's attorney to find out how to sign it. So I carry that in my wallet now, a sample of how to sign for if you're power of attorney.
Okay, so yeah, you want to make sure that you are signing things properly if you are acting as power of attorney as well. So yeah, there's a lot of things to keep track of here. Again, something to keep in mind when you designate someone as your agent, as your advocate, as your power of attorney, that person has authority for making any and all decisions about your care, medical treatment, hospitalization, offering, withholding, or withdrawing whatever kind of treatment. That person, we have the HIPAA laws, which make it real interesting as a clergy person when I try to see, I'd like to visit so-and-so. Maybe they're here, maybe they're not. I understand why we have these laws. The medical power of attorney. So if I do not have that power of attorney, let's say Eileen has a lapse of judgment and says, I want Eric to decide this thing. And I go in there. So yeah, Eileen has this lapse of judgment and Eric is going to be her decision maker. If I don't have power of attorney, I can't go up to Eileen's doctor and say, all right, tell me how she's doing. I need to know how she's doing before we make any decisions. The doctor's going to tell me, sorry, I can't tell you. Your power of attorney will be able to access your medical records. So you want somebody who you are okay with seeing your medical records. The power of attorney for healthcare can authorize an autopsy if things come to that for whatever reason. And they can start the process of what happens. Let's say you die. Your power of attorney for healthcare is the first person who gets to get the ball rolling on what's going to happen with your body. I should say, in terms of an autopsy, there are certain circumstances where the law says, yes, they are required to perform an autopsy. I don't know exactly what those are in Indiana, but I imagine they have those laws. Like we've touched on already, I just want to sum up. You're going to need to do the following when you create that power of attorney for healthcare. You need to specify your wishes about life-sustaining treatment. You need to name some successors. You name your spouse as your power of attorney for healthcare, and you outlive your spouse. You need a successor. You name, for whatever reason, you need to name at least one successor. And then, as I have said before, after you name this person as your successor, what is the very next thing you need to do? You need to tell that person, you need to talk with that person and say, you are my backup healthcare power of attorney. If my son cannot do this for whatever reason, they're going to call you, and I want you to know this is what I want. Again, talk to people. I cannot say that enough. Talk to people. Yes. That's an even better idea. Yes. Yeah. Talk. Yes, you probably want to talk to the person before you name him or her as your power of attorney. It's bad enough to have someone call and say, you've been named the power of attorney, you need to decide, and not know. You don't want that. Yes. Yep. Things need to be signed and witnessed. So yeah, it's unlikely that you will get a call out of the blue saying you've been named the power of attorney. If you never signed anything and never had other people attest to that, something is up. Like we've said, put these decisions in writing. The state of Indiana has an Advanced Directives Resource Center. You can see the address on your paper there. If you're looking at an electronic copy, you just click the link and it'll bring you there. Who to tell about these documents? Certainly, like we've said a few times already, if anyone's name is anywhere in these documents, let that person know. If you have loved ones who might be called in, so that kind of order of succession we talked about earlier, if you have an adult grandchild, they're a little bit further down the list, but there is a possibility they might call that person in and say, some crazy stuff happened and we can't get a hold of any of these other people. You're the person. You want to make sure that that person is aware of your wishes. These are legally binding documents. When they are properly drawn up, signed, and executed, you're set. Your people will have that power to speak for you. Where to keep copies of these documents? First thing, to affirm what Arlene said, you're going to want to have a bunch of copies. This is not the sort of thing where you only want one. You want to have some at home in a safe but accessible location. You know your house better than me, I hope. You can know where that is. You'll want some that are not at home but are also in a safe but accessible location. It may be in the home, in your child's home. It may be with your neighbor. You want somewhere where they're safe but accessible. Not in your safety deposit box. Those are almost impossible to get into unless you are the owner of the box. They are designed to be hard to get into. That is the last thing you need. And I think we might have mentioned last week, the last thing you need is to try and tell the banker, the paper that tells me I have the authority to get into the box is locked in the box. They're not going to be able to help you. So don't put them in your safe deposit box. You are going to want to have a copy on file with whoever your agent, designee, power of attorney, whoever that person is, they should have a copy. You will want to have that on file with your doctor. If you have an attorney work with you to draw these up, have one on file with him or her. And as a couple people have attested to already, bring copies with if you know you're going to be admitted to a healthcare facility, you're going in for surgery, whatever the case may be, bring them with you and get them on your file there. Many fire departments, I know for a fact that St. John does have this. A lot of other places do. St. John participates in the Vial of Life program. And so you'll call the St. John Fire Department and say, I want to find out about this Vial of Life program. You can call, if you live in another town, call your fire department and ask if they have something similar. They give you a sticker to go on your refrigerator, and they give you a vial, a little container to go in the refrigerator that has medication lists, doctor's orders, DNR, all of those things. So you can do that. The reason it's on the refrigerator is paramedics are probably going to look there to see if you have medication in there. So they will look, if they see the sticker on the refrigerator, they'll go, there are documents I need here. We have a St. John firefighter in the congregation who also wanted me to let you know that St. John has a program where they can give you a lockbox. So you can put a key to your front door in there. So if for some reason the fire department needs to access your house, they can let themselves in instead of bashing the door down. So I was asked to pass that along, which I will. Our firefighter paramedic also mentioned you can place a card in your wallet with your ID that says where you can find these documents. So you can write on there, put it right with your driver's license. They'll want to know who you are and where you're from. And you can put on there, there's a red folder in the cabinet above the stove. Someplace that somebody who doesn't know your house would be able to find. They can probably find your kitchen. They can find a red folder. You don't want to say, it's locked in the safe behind the clothes in the basement. So that is another way you can help people find these documents. If we're going to go to the trouble of doing it, you need to make them accessible to people, or else, again, if they're not looking at them, they don't exist. What if you have them in your... Right. The question was, what if you do have them in your safe? I would say open your safe, make a copy, and then put the copy back in the safe. You do not want your only copy to be in the safe. And if your safe is that easy to open, maybe you don't need to bother with it anyway. But you want these to be accessible. You don't need to keep them like out on your kitchen table all the time. But, you know, first responders, if they come to your home, they will look in your refrigerator. They will check for your ID. So they'll either go for your wallet in your pocket or go through your purse till they find your wallet. You can have something in there that says, this is where you can find my stuff. Because like I said, if they're not looking at them, they don't exist. Their legal obligation is we got to do everything available to us, whether you want that or not. Finally, let me say this, and then we'll have just a couple minutes for questions. Who can help me with putting all these things together? First and foremost, anybody who might be involved in making decisions. Family member, friend, neighbor, whoever those people might be, talk to those people. Maybe you have been through this before with a loved one. Talk with other family members who were there for that experience. You know, what did they see? What did they notice? What went as planned? What went completely sideways that you might want to try to avoid? You will definitely want to talk to your physician about this. Your physician is going to know a lot more about your health and what might be the right interventions for you than certainly I would. If you're in the hospital and, you know, let's say God forbid something happens and you had every intention of doing this today, because I've really sold you on the importance of doing this, but you end up in the hospital today, talk to your chaplain, talk to your patient advocate. You can talk to an ethicist. Very often, hospitals, healthcare places will have somebody who they consult on ethical matters. Talk to these people. They are there for this purpose. Your social worker in the hospital, yes. So if you're in the hospital, there are people there to help you with this who are not physicians and who are not nurses. You can talk to your pastor about this. I have been there. I have been an ICU chaplain and seen some stuff I wish I didn't see. You know, certainly not to the extent some other people have, but you know, I would be happy to talk with you one-on-one on, you know, what might be the right fit for you. But like I've said before, I would be one person among several. So like I said, my hope for our time together is that I can equip and prepare you to go out and have these conversations. So with that, let me go ahead. I will end our recording here, and if there are things that people would like to mention or discuss that don't need to be on the permanent record, we can go ahead and do that.
Thank you.